So last night, the full council at Colchester met to pass a motion on the climate emergency that they have declared to push the government to do more. So a few of us decided to go along and just give them our opinion on their climate emergency motion. Now, we did make rather a fatal error, but I'll tell you about that after the second speaker.
Good evening. I've been evangelical about renewable energy for over 25 years. That was until the day I actually bothered to research it properly. To my horror, I found that the so-called green initiatives aren't remotely green. They are environmentally disastrous and arguably far worse than anything we are currently doing. But what has shocked me more than the ugly truth about green technology is the attitude of this council when concerns have been raised over the highly polluting products, their inability to be recycled, and the child slave labour involved, not to mention the risk to the public from EVs exploding. Most solar panels are made in China, often with forced labour. The extreme temperatures to make the panels come from burning coal. In the US alone, over 50 million panels a year are installed, generating 1 million metric tonnes of hazardous waste, which isn't cost-effective to recycle. Wind turbines last around 20 years and consume a colossal amount of resources and energy to manufacture, not to mention the blight and the bird kill. Diesel engines start them up and then gallons of oil lubricate them, and they can't be readily recycled either. I've already informed the Environment and Sustainability Panel that lithium batteries for solar storage and EVs are environmentally horrific. Every year, a single lithium mine causes millions of tonnes of permanent waste laced with sulfuric acid and radioactive uranium, polluting the water supply for 300 years. Not to mention the unacceptable human costs of child labour to mine cobalt. The children directly handle toxic cobalt, with many crushed to death in collapsing mine shafts. 3 months after this was first pointed out, the council added 100 e-bikes. And more recently, an order has been placed for electric road sweepers. And now you want to vote for more forced labour solar panels and lithium batteries. So is the anti-slavery policy on the council's website there for just decoration? Because you clearly don't abide by it. These are not just teething problems of new technology. They are fundamental flaws, serious ones which cannot be ignored by anyone who genuinely cares about people and the planet. So why then is this council not only adopting them, but pushing for the government to do even more damage? How can habitat-destroying mining, mountains of permanent toxic waste, millions of tonnes of spent solar panels and wind turbines be good for the environment? If you want to push for something genuinely worthwhile, instead of supporting the corporate greed behind this faux green agenda, demand the government do not deploy any technology that badly pollutes on production and cannot easily be recycled. In other words, real green initiatives. The biggest threat to our survival isn't the weather, as history has already shown. It's people blindly following orders without question or thought. Anyone with an ounce of honour and integrity who genuinely cares for this planet and the people on it could not possibly support what is essentially environmental terrorism. Thank you.
Thank you. Carinna Cooper will be the next speaker.
Good evening. Is Council fully aware of the measures needed to ensure UK Parliament meets net zero obligations by 2050? Please note, these are Parliament obligations, not ours. Is Council fully aware of the UK government-funded Absolute Zero report agreed in the House of Lords? All airports to close, all shipping to cease, beef and lamb phased out, fertiliser use restricted, gas boilers and natural fires all to be replaced by ineffective heat pumps. Fossil fuels phased out, to name but a few. Who has the money to replace their entire central heating system? You, perhaps? But do your constituents? And what will we eat when there's no beef, lamb or imported foods allowed? Much of our farmland, if not rewilded, is being approved for solar panels. We cannot feed our population already. Does your family want to eat synthetic food? And what effect will that have on their health? To quote Dr. Patrick Moore, co-founder of Greenpeace, if we actually achieve net zero, at least 50% of the population would die of hunger and disease. Have you studied the full data that IPCC based its reports on? Is anyone here or in the other 300 councils qualified to analyse that data and declare a climate emergency, especially considering the IPCC hasn't declared one? It's puzzling to have local councils declare an emergency, but not central government. Everyone wants to do their bit for the environment, but don't you think we should at least be doing the right bits and make fact-based decisions, not fear-based ones? Central government are influenced by the corporate world who profit massively from things like net zero. We absolutely rely on the honesty and integrity of our local councils to make sure the public are protected from corporate greed and manipulation, from agendas that don't serve the public interest or the planet. We need to have real expert advice to make sure we do what is right and not just follow what is popular. We ought not to participate in the madness of crowds. We publicly offer Council the opportunity to have at least 2 UN-credentialed climatologists with decades of experience and peer-reviewed papers that IPCC themselves have used to come to Colchester and speak directly to us in a public meeting. It's imperative to have an open discussion with the public and have their agreement. Attempting to force draconian measures onto people will backfire. The destruction of 75% of ULEZ cameras and the vandalism of 20-mile-an-hour road signs in Wales are cases in point. We must have a public meeting with true experts who can navigate through the minefield of information that no one here is qualified to. We must separate fact from fiction about the environmental challenges we all face and come together as a community to tackle them. We owe it to ourselves and future generations to get this right. There is no planet B. So please, name a date we can finally hold this most necessary of public meetings in as large a venue as you can provide. Thank you.
So you might have noticed they're not responding to any of our questions. And that is the fatal error we made. You have the choice of when you have your say, you can do it right at the beginning with everyone else, or you can attach it to the specific motion you're there to talk about, which is what we did. Unfortunately, that motion was item 10 on the agenda, and by the time they got to it, they were running so behind that they were trying to speed things up, so therefore they didn't respond to anything we said. Which means we're going to have to go back and ask those questions all over again. Oh, won't that be fun? But there we go, lesson learned. So anyway, on to the next speaker, which was Cheryl. And she wanted to know why Colchester Council wanted to put in lots more 20-mile-an-hour zones for air quality when their own report said there weren't any issues with air quality.
Additionally, is there evidence to prove that slowing people's journeys down by a third or more improves air quality? While some car emissions will be lower in 20-mile-an-hour areas compared to 30-mile-an-hour, older cars may pollute more. Journeys that take a third longer to complete are likely to increase fuel consumption and an overall increase in particulates because of the extra time in the car, and also very likely to cause a backlog of traffic at peak times and potentially cause congestion in nearby areas that aren't in the 20-mile-an-hour zones. Whilst 20-mile-an-hour zones are rational outside schools and playgrounds for safety reasons, elsewhere there is mounting evidence that these slow zones increase accidents due to the driver frustration and carelessness at slow speeds from both pedestrians and drivers. According to analysis of government data by the Institute of Advanced Motorists, IAM, serious accidents on 20-mile-an-hour roads increased by 26%, with 29% increase in serious casualties and 19% increase in minor injuries. Simon Best, IAM's chief executive, said, "The government and councils need to take stock on the effectiveness of 20-mile-an-hour signs, emphasising the need for government and councils to re-evaluate the impact of these speed limits." A recent report from Bath Council raised concerns about the consequences of 20-mile-an-hour zones, which have been associated with increased fatalities and injuries. The report questions the wisdom of continuing the programme and recommends against expanding area-based schemes. Bath has admitted it cannot afford to scrap the 20-mile-an-hour speed zones, which were implemented at a staggering substantial cost of £871,000. Colchester, please take note. We certainly can't afford to waste hundreds of thousands of pounds, can we?
So here's what a couple of the councillors had to say just prior to voting.
I paid tribute to the speakers at the beginning, Rachel, Carinna, Cheryl and others. It was like a breath of fresh air to hear another view, and I think that they remind us we should be taking an engineering approach to the problems and not just the campaigning approach where we just repeat the same things over and over again and just clog up the system. So that was really good.
First of all, I'd like to thank the residents for coming this evening, sitting through this, for attending and for speaking. Thank you. Following some of these issues being raised at the Environment Panel, I, like others, have investigated not just the use of solar panels, batteries, etc., but the befores and the afters of these products. Where are the components that are used sourced? How are they mined? Where are they mined? Who mines them? What happens to the components after use? Are they recyclable? Do they poison landfill or catch fire? Councillor Gocher mentioned the mining of coal, and the motion wants to further ban oil drilling. But what about the mining of the minerals for solar panels? Do we not care where they come from? And therefore, I'm not prepared to vote for a motion that ignores these before and after. And I've asked that every cabinet decision includes these befores and afters so we can all make the best educated decisions that we possibly can and are aware of all the facts. Thank you.
So how did they vote?
Right, those in favour of the main motion. Right, those against. So there were 17 against. The motion is carried.
So no surprises at all that they voted for it. There really wasn't. So you might be wondering, was all that effort worthwhile? And yes, it was, because 17 disagreed with the motion. And we happened to speak to one of the councillors outside, and we asked him, could that have happened a year ago? And he said, I don't think so. So the tide is turning. Now, how much influence we've had on that, it's impossible to say, but it's very enlightening to see it happen, because that's just over a third of the council, when all the other climate emergency things they've been absolutely unanimous on, in part thanks to a visit from XR cluttering the pavement. And now just over a third of the council isn't fully supporting it anymore. So the tide is turning, and the more we can keep going and enlightening them, because many of them won't have known that information about just how bad a lot of these things are. So it's predetermined before they do the vote which way it's going to go usually. So they had to sit there and listen to just how awful these things are, and then they had to vote for it. So some won't care. Others, you could see, well, certainly my sense when I was speaking, you felt they were really, it was sinking in what I was saying. They may not have wanted to hear it, they might not agree with it, but it definitely went in. And particularly I noticed when I was doing all the editing that there was a couple of key moments. One where I said if you genuinely wanted to do something good for the environment, and the other when I said about blindly following orders without question or thought, some heads went down. And you could see they were feeling it, or they were just getting a bit sleepy at that point. Who knows? Hard to tell with politicians, and it was a long evening. But the thing is, the more we educate them, the more they're going to have to wrestle with their own conscience, those that are good people. And there's a lot of good people in Colchester. We may not agree with their points of view, but what we do see is people that are genuinely trying to make a difference. But as public opinion starts to shift and change, we've planted some very strong seeds, some of which are already germinating. So they're going to have to be fighting against that and their own conscience. So the more you can share this video, the better. Now, they still claim that the green tech, despite its problems, is a better option. So we are going to write to them and ask them to evidence that claim, because it doesn't seem likely if you include the recycling. So this is beginning to turn into a full-time job for me. Little did I think it would end up like this when I started. But anyway, if you'd like to support the work I'm doing, I've put in a couple of donation links to PayPal and Stripe beneath this video. So if you feel so inclined and want to donate to help keep this work going, it'd be very much appreciated. Until next time, take care.